Well, I have all that false Christ Catholic temptation off my chest now. I'm sorry if I seem passionate about it. It is because both my mother and I were both tempted in this same area. I just got to tell somebody what Jesus did for me and my mother, saving us from this. I can't keep it to myself anymore. It's like a fire in my belly. I have to release it, and social media is the release valve. If you go back on my videos before all the Catholic episodes, if you remember, I said my mother was set to go back to her mother after living with and being brought up by her grandmother. And she sent her to church because her inherited demon caused her to have demonic episodes as a small child. And I described them. But by this age, 14, the episodes were now non-existent, and now she couldn't scare her siblings anymore. I thank God for my grandmother and everything she did for my mother. The end of an era for my mum and a new beginning. She kept up with her evangelical meetings and didn't become a nun, and neither a Roman Catholic, which would have played into her inherited demon's hands. It was strange for her to be back at home with her mother and father, brother and sisters. Okay, I'll put this as simply as I can and not take too long with it. My mother soon discovered that her father had a changed and aging wife and a strange adolescent daughter around the house, that because she had been away so long from the family, he could hardly remember her birth. Along with her two older sisters, their father appreciated the beauty and charm of his daughters and watched their success in turning the eyes of young men wherever they went. There was overcrowding in the house, even more so with my mother now re-entering the house. 5 girls and a boy, mother and father. Her mother saw the presence of the desire for a sexual relationship with the older girls in her husband. But for whatever reason, she didn't protect her 3 older daughters. My mother and her 2 older sisters fell victim to an incestuous father who molested them. Now, there are many doorways that demons can take advantage of to have dominion in an individual's life. And my mother's father opened a portal for them in my mother's life, as if she didn't already have one inherited demon to deal with, through the doorway of sex outside of marriage. Let me explain. Any people having any participation in sexual perversions directly opens a person up to the inflow of demons. Sex with the same sex, sex with animals, sex with demons, rape and violent sexual assault, particularly in children. This results in the entrance of some of the strongest demons, bringing sadomasochism and incest demon infestation. Look, it is well established, at least among many Christians, that demons can transfer via the act of incest and molestation. Sex is more than a mere mechanical act. It is also a spiritual act. Mark 10, verse 8 in the Message explains how. Jesus said, "Moses wrote this command only as a concession to your hard-hearted ways." In the original creation, God made male and female to be together. Because of this, a man leaves father and mother, and in marriage he becomes one flesh with a woman. No longer 2 individuals, but forming a new unity because God created this organic union of the two sexes. No one should desecrate God's art by cutting them apart. Marriage is not a contract, it's a covenant, a most sacred union between a woman and a man and God Himself. It is a union of body, mind, and spirit that reflects something of God's nature. That's why in the beginning of creation, God says, we will make them men and woman in our. We will make man and woman in our image. Building this kind of oneness doesn't just happen in deep discussions and major moments, but it involves the spirits of the woman and man and God. Outside of this sacred context and God's holy law, demons exploit the rebellion of this sacred union and holy matrimony. Yes, he truly makes full use of and derives benefits from this rebellious resource of incest and molestation by sending in demons into the spirit of man to make a spiritual union instead of God's organic union of the married two sexes in holy matrimony. And so, Mum was doubly worse off than she was with just one demon to cope with in her life. So my mother's virginity was violated, not saved now for her wedding night. God's holy plan for holy matrimony is this, and has always been. The virgin stays in the secure place with mother and father. She only dates a young man she feels that she could marry. But never alone, but with a chaperone. They are never left alone in a room. No kissing or even holding hands. That is why in a marriage ceremony, the presiding minister says, "Now you may kiss the bride." A large candle is placed in the middle of two skinny candles. The skinny candles are lit at the beginning of the ceremony. But once legally married, the two skinny ones are snuffed out and the large one is then lit, depicting the two becoming one flesh. As this is what God has now done through the sacred vows to each other, and later in their sexual union on their wedding night. The hymen will be broken in the maiden, and blood will appear as proof of the maiden's virginity. Some even lay a white sheet under the sexual union to prove to family and friends the marriage bed was undefiled. Satan does everything in his power for young couples to not experience this purity act at the beginning of a marriage. And he succeeded with my mother.